bounds of everyone agreeing.
Madeleine Dean is a Democratic Congresswoman for Pennsylvania. She joins us from Washington. You'll be familiar with her because she, of course, prosecuted Donald Trump in the impeachment trial in Congress. Madeleine Dean, good to have you with us. Thank you for being on the programme. Let me start with Liz Cheney because since you took such a prominent role in the impeachment, I would dare say you have very little in common with her. She has a very conservative attitude, but on this issue, I imagine you stand shoulder to shoulder.
In fact, I just did that as I walked on the floor to vote not 15, 20 minutes ago. I was right with her and I commended her on her bravery, her honesty. So while we have a lot of policy differences, there's one thing we have in common that is much more powerful, and that is an association with the truth and standing up for the truth and for integrity and for democracy. I couldn't be prouder of what Liz Cheney has done.
To the business in the White House today, the Gang of Four are in there. Officials say to try and find areas of mutual agreement. Is there any?
I believe there is. We all want to invest in our infrastructure and grow jobs in this country. So I hope the Republican Party can find its way to yes, an investment in our families. I know that right now in Pennsylvania, my former colleagues in the Pennsylvania House are going around the state bragging of the tremendous investment in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania from the American Rescue Plan. But those same legislators are desperately hoping that we will find our way to yes on infrastructure. I certainly hope Mr. McCarthy can summon up support from his conference, but you do see a conference really in convulsions with itself, with an inability to tell the truth, except when leaders like Liz Cheney stand up.
Congresswoman, when Kevin McCarthy came out of the White House today, he was asked about the election, and he said, interestingly, the legitimacy of the last election is not in doubt. We are in the White House with the president. He was implying that it was run by Joe Biden fair and square. Do you think now the Republican Party is going to be able to draw a line under that whole issue and move on to focus on issues like the infrastructure bill?
I wish I could say yes, Kathy, but I don't see that, and certainly not in my interactions with Leader McCarthy just yesterday on the floor of the House. Unfortunately, Mr. McCarthy speaks out of both sides of his mouth. At one point, the president was responsible for the insurrection and the violence that descended upon the Capitol on January the 6th. At the next point, he supported the big lie. I hope they stick with telling their constituents, telling the American public that, of course, the election was won fairly and squarely by the new administration, the Biden-Harris administration, because the American people desperately need the truth, and they need to undo the terrible seeds that were sown by the former president and his attorney general, and by many of them, that somehow the election was stolen. Mr. McCarthy needs to say that loudly and clearly over and over again without hesitation.
When you go back to your district in Pennsylvania, how much do people talk to you about the events of January the 6th, about the insurrection on Capitol Hill?
My constituents have been so kind, have reached out to me many, many times, or even if I'm just in the street or walking into a store, they say to me, how are you? We're worried about you. We're proud of you, but we're worried about you. Some even hesitate to ask me and say, well, we don't want to bring up those incredibly difficult memories, but to a person, Republicans and Democrats, my constituents that I've had the chance to interact with in these intervening months have been nothing but compassionate and shocked at an attack by Americans incited by the former president on the very seat of our democracy.
Congresswoman, clearly the president wants to get caught trying to win over Republicans and win Republican votes. It suits him politically. But if he doesn't get some progress in the coming weeks, it strikes me that the progressive voices in your party, the likes of Bernie Sanders, are going to get louder and louder as the summer wears on. At what point does he have to call it and sort of force this through Congress?
Well, I think he's been very clear and very bold in both his proposals and his strategy, that yes, of course, we should go as far as we can to exhaust diplomacy and bipartisanship. The very meeting today was a very important part of that conversation. But at some point, the president, as he has told us, is not going to let the big lie and incapable members of the Republican Party from blocking progress for the American people. I have to tell you that I'm surprised that the Republicans wouldn't say, yes, this is something we need to be a part of. Infrastructure, investment, jobs, investment in our families is exactly what we want to be a part of. But we do see that the president will seek bipartisanship. There's nobody better skilled at it with more experience. And he's ably joined by Vice President, former Senator Harris. But I think at some point we'll have to move. We're not going to wait all year. We're not going to wait all session. The American people need the investment now.
Congresswoman Madeleine Dean,
Okay.
good of you to spare us some time again. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So let's dig a bit deeper into this.